perfectly for a monster rally in Q4. Chart analysts are expecting a final parabola for Bitcoin, rocketing it to new all-time highs yet again. Then profits will be taken and rotated into altcoins like XRP. The higher Bitcoin goes, the better it is for your altcoins. Now, by the way, today, the S&P 500 and the Russell 2000, the small cap index, both of them hit new all-time highs. Again, today. And while it's true we ultimately want to see greater strength from the Russell 2000 because that indicates that people have a greater appetite for risk going further out the risk curve. When that happens, altcoins always follow. So yes, it's true we want to see greater strength there than we've seen to this point. I got to say, it is doubtful that this index, the Russell 2000, would just tease new all-time highs multiple times, which all happened recently, only to fall below and enter a bear market. Now, that would not be historically normal behavior for the Russell 2000. So I think it's just teasing it a little bit now before a full-on breakout, which means, of course, altcoins will follow. And so, look, there are so many reasons to be optimistic that the best is yet ahead before we finally hit a peak. XRP, it's going to $21 in this final massive rally. But before going a stone's throw away from $3.04, you got Bitcoin at $122,218. 24-hour high for XRP, $3.09. 24-hour high for Bitcoin, $123,441. I mean, folks, Bitcoin knocking on the all-time highs door. That is pretty damn close. I mean, look, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. I'd be surprised if we don't see a final parabola from Bitcoin. Because if I'll just say this, if the all-time high of $124,000 that we saw a couple months ago, if that was the high for this cycle, that was an uncharacteristically weak parabola to get Bitcoin to that point. That would be, not impossible, that would be peculiar. And so it's not surprising to see that almost 100% of the chart analysts that I follow believe Bitcoin's going to go for one final leg higher. Here's a post from chart analyst Tony Severino. It says, it looks like Bitcoin has chosen up as the direction in which to release all the pent-up volatility. We could be starting the grand finale of this cycle. And I will say this, if he's right, if almost all the analysts that I follow are right about Bitcoin and it's going up, this will be the final move. And even if you don't hold Bitcoin and don't give a damn about it, that's perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable, by the way. Because let's be real, the opportunity for life-changing wealth, we all know it's in altcoins. It's in XRP and everything else that makes sense that has way less money in it. But even if you don't hold it, you want Bitcoin to go as high as freaking possible because the more money that flows into Bitcoin, the more money is going to be sloshing around in the entire crypto space, which means the higher XRP and all of your altcoins go. That's the reason you should be excited to follow what's happening with Bitcoin, even if you don't hold it. But he could be right. And this is what I keep seeing from almost all chart analysts that I'm following here is that this thing's going to go. Look at this post from chart analyst Crypto Wizard. It's happening. There we go. $120,000 delivered. And this is just from this afternoon, by the way, at 1:50 p.m. Central. It says Bitcoin has been range bound for 86 days, but has now broken above $120,000. The rally to $132,000 has begun. As bears are trapped, we're up 15.21%. So he thinks it's going to go. And even if we peaked anywhere from there, $140,000, $150,000, anywhere in there, that's going to give us plenty of steam for XRP to go berserk and finally have a true face-melting rally for the first time in over 8 years. So yes, very happy to see that XRP has hit multiple all-time highs this year, no doubt. That shows tremendous strength, but historically, the final leg for XRP is way more impressive than what happens during the initial surge for XRP in terms of dollars. So as fun as it's been, it's the last year, it's been a lot of fun ever since the election. I think that what is most probable is that the next part is going to be way more stunning. And it's going to be quick. If history rhymes with itself, it'll probably take place over a span of a few weeks. And so the analysts that are calling for double-digit price action for XRP, I will not be surprised if they end up being correct. And we'll find out together. Here's a post from Credible Crypto. This is from this afternoon at 2:58 p.m., so just several hours ago. He says, and he's talking about Bitcoin here, went a bit lower, but still held the higher low, and does in fact look poetic AF. on the weekly. So he's thinking it looks pretty damn good here. Will not be surprised if this thing goes higher. There's a post here from chart analyst Tara. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just wanted to note that she's highlighting here that a very good chance Bitcoin's going to hit $130,800 on this next final wave up here. So, look, I'm not in the price prediction game. I don't know if that's where it's going to peak or if the analysts that are calling for like $150,000, $170,000 for Bitcoin. I don't pretend to know who's right, but I am on team this goes higher before it finally peaks. And could be wrong. I got to tell you, I'll say it again. I think it's really peculiar if we had that weak of a parabola to have Bitcoin peak and it's already done at a little over $124,000. Usually this thing goes with a super bang. And so if this time's different in that regard, okay, fine. I'm kind of skeptical of that. I think it's going to go higher. And then I think that you're going to see the Russell 2000 go absolutely insane. And then altcoins are just going to follow. Here's a post from Matt Hogan. And he's the CIO at Bitwise. And he was just sharing some price predictions from major banks. And not that I put huge stock into what these major banks are saying, but I got to tell you, it is still fascinating to see that reputable banks, they're perceived as reputable banks, we're talking traditional finance. They are calling for some monster Bitcoin price action here. Citigroup's calling for Bitcoin to peak at, by the end of this year, $133,000. JP Morgan is calling for $165,000. Standard Chartered calling for $200,000. And so he wrote here, Q4 is going to be fun. So I don't know which price prediction is right, if any of them, but won't be surprised to see this thing higher. There's this post from chart analyst Bobby A. And he said, Bitcoin dominance rising as the price of Bitcoin rises at this stage is incredibly bullish for altcoins. Yeah, and that's true. Bitcoin dominance going up as the price of Bitcoin is also rising at this stage in the game. Yes, that's great for altcoins. And why? Because if Bitcoin is still the focus enough that you can push up the dominance of Bitcoin, which it technically has gone up slightly for the last week. I mean, you can see it's at 58.81% after having a recent low of closer to 57%. So it's probably up about 1.5%. To see that happen at a point where Bitcoin is surging, I mean, the whole market surged, but to see Bitcoin leading upward, that means a boatload of money is flowing into Bitcoin. And I want that son of a bitch to go as high as freaking possible, like I was saying just a couple minutes ago. The higher Bitcoin goes, the more money will slosh through the rest of the space. Like I said, ultimately hitting XRP. That's why he's saying Bitcoin dominance rising, having a bigger percentage of the entire market, and Bitcoin price rising at the same time this far into the cycle. That is incredibly bullish. He's saying that because he knows what this means for altcoins. Way higher prices. The more money that flows in, the better. And take a look at this. This is a post from Ryan Dietrich. I've recently become a fan of this guy. He just, talk about a data-driven individual. He's the chief market strategist at Carson Group. And he wrote, Q4 has never been lower when the S&P 500 makes a new all-time high in the usually weak months of August and September, along with at least one in October. This bodes well for continued strength in 2025. So let's break this down. Here's what he's saying. This is why I want you to know this. When we look back at history, there's a very clear pattern that tends to play out in the stock market. Normally, August and September are seen as weak months for the S&P 500. Often full of volatility, but, lots of chop, right? But in the rare years where the index actually makes new all-time highs in both August and September, October almost always sees new all-time highs too, and the outcome for the rest of the year has been remarkably consistent. I mean, you can see the data on your screen there. In every single case since 1950 where this has happened, the S&P 500 stocks has gone on to finish the fourth quarter higher. On average, those Q4 returns come in at nearly 7%, which is a big jump compared to the typical 4% gain in a normal year. So the logic here is pretty simple. If the market is strong enough to push into record territory during months that usually give it trouble, that strength tends to carry over into the final stretch of the year. October alone has averaged solid gains in these situations, and then frankly, the momentum, it just keeps building into November and December. What makes this even more compelling is that the pattern has, listen to this, the pattern has never failed in history. Every single time this setup has occurred, the fourth quarter has finished positive. And so now, in 2025, we're seeing the exact same setup. Multiple new highs in August, more in September, and already a couple logged in October, actually. So if history is any guide, this bodes very well for continued strength into the final months of the year. The crypto asset class moves in tandem with the stock market, so it makes sense to believe we'll be seeing some fireworks in crypto land in Q4. That's the way I see it. And so that's why when I look at data like this, historical performance, it's just a matter-of-fact statement that humans in similar situations tend to behave the same as they did previously. So if you see a setup where there's lots of data points, especially it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you get up in that range, if you have that many data points going back like half a century or more, if you just play the odds, folks, if say it's an instance where it's 9 out of 10 times the favorable thing happens, do you want to bet against that? I mean, yeah, of course I acknowledge, like, if you continue to play the odds, eventually you're going to be wrong at some point. But if you're looking at that, so what? So if you're wrong 10% of the time, okay, so that one happens, you're wrong. What about the other 9 times when you're right? Isn't that more important? So if you're just playing the odds and counting on history to rhyme with itself, that makes a ton of sense. History does tend to rhyme with itself. So if you only count on that, yes, I acknowledge sometimes you will be wrong. And since I do count on that, I will be wrong sometimes. But I'm not expecting me to be right 100% of the time. I'm expecting to be right in those types of situations the strong majority of the time. Because history keeps rhyming with itself. Unless there's a fundamental shift which we need to take into account, history will keep rhyming with itself. And so if you just bet on those odds, you won't always be right. You will be wrong sometimes. But most of the time, you'll be right. That's what matters. And crypto follows along with this, which is why I took a few minutes to share this with you. This matters. Here's a post from chart analyst Dom. XRP attempting to regain the all-time high VWAP after 2 months of rejection. Flipping this area to support should trigger a run to $3.30. Okay, well, at the time we're recording this, still looking pretty damn good. He posted this at 11:24 a.m. So we're still in a similar price range here. So you may see a bigger jump from XRP if it can hold here. Now, of course, if Bitcoin rolls back to the downsides, it's always possible. Don't expect fireworks from XRP anytime soon. The asset class moves in tandem. But if this can be sustained, oh boy, buckle up, my friends. Here's a post from chart analyst Greg Crypto. XRP, the chasm. It says, as of today, the price of touching the chasm, which is the green trend line, that's what he named it, the chasm, is $10.30. As time goes on, the price of the chasm continues to rise. Only few and patience truly gets it. So the further this goes out, if the trend line is to be believed, and he's confident in it certainly, then when it finally breaks, if it takes a little bit longer, the price is just going to be that much higher to touch the trend line that he finds is crucial. And again, getting into double-digit price action, that is not remotely crazy. That's why all of these analysts that I follow, and by the way, they pretty much all accurately called XRP breaking out this cycle. They've got a good track record with this. All of them are either heavily predicting us getting into the double-digit price territory for XRP, or at least acknowledging that there's a very real possibility we get at least to $10. So those would be the more conservative predictions, like, for instance, the blockchain backer. He's talking more like the $8 to $10 range. And he could be right. It's possible the more conservative estimate is right. It's also possible the really high ones that, the analysts I follow, right, like over $30. I think probably the truth is going to be somewhere in between. I say that's not me making a price prediction. I admit I don't know. But just based on what I see from these analysts, if you just look at the extremes, given that they all have great track records, just look at the extremes. It's whatever you're talking about, whatever they're covering, it's usually not the extremes. The truth just is generally somewhere in between. Doesn't mean it can't be the extremes. It can. But I'm just saying anywhere in there, whether it's on the lower end or higher end, I think that's going to result in a ton of people listening being ridiculously happy and enjoying life-changing wealth. So I'll be thrilled. And I hope you guys will be too. But here's a post from Mikey Bull Crypto, XRP USD chart. XRP to $21 in this final massive rally. At least my conservative targets are $6 to $10. Anything is possible in crypto. So he does have some bare minimums, that $6 to $10 range, but he's now looking at, seriously, a price surge to $21 per XRP. Look, this type of thing happens in crypto. Don't think it can't happen to you. That's a defeatist attitude that is not in line with logic. So I don't know if this is going to happen, but it is not unreasonable to believe that it is absolutely within the realm of possibility. This stuff happens in crypto all the time, especially when you get to the end of a market cycle and pure euphoria. Here's Chart Nerd, and he wrote, he's just insisting the same thing over and over again, which I appreciate that. Actually, he's being very consistent here. XRP, few understand. $15 and then $27 is programmed. So he is one of the analysts that is thinking that it's going to get closer to the upper range there. And it's certainly possible. But even if it were 15, wouldn't most of you listening be thrilled? I mean, unless you're brand new to XRP, and then I guess your expectations are going to be perhaps even higher. But I think tons of you listening have been around 4 years and we're buying around 20, 30, 40, 50 cents, you know? Well, if this thing goes to $15, come on, that's going to be so life-changing for so many of you listening, right? It'll be life-changing for me, and I'm not going to, mind you, I'm not going to sell pretty much any of my XRP at that high. It'll have been too great of an opportunity for me to not sell lower. I took on greater risk up front by buying more XRP than most normal humans would be willing to purchase over a span of years. And I did that so that I feel comfortable exiting at lower price levels. That was my strategy. So I will be exiting at lower price levels. I'll be selling most of my XRP, if not all of it, between $5 to $8. That's just me personally. That doesn't mean I don't think it does get up that high and sell a small percentage that high. But it doesn't mean I'm like short XRP big picture. And just to kind of illustrate that sentiment, eventually we will be back in a bear market. I'm going to buy a metric fuck ton of XRP again. When we're in a bear market again and it craters to wherever it's going to crater after popping really high, I'm still going to keep running this channel. I'm going to do this again because XRP is an obvious clear winner, early winner of the crypto space. Utility for XRP has never been higher. I'm going to keep betting on that horse. Here's a post from Galaxy. XRP, 300 days of consolidation below previous all-time high, looks primed for a breakout. And so yet another analyst here expecting this thing to just absolutely rocket to the upside, hit new all-time highs, get into that face-melting territory. He's been very consistent on that as well. Then there's this from chart analyst Zoom. XRP rejected from point of interest twice. Once broken, a move to $3.30 zone would likely be a quick one. So it can move fast here, folks. Just keep watching, but I think the best is yet ahead. We are not done with this market cycle. And even if Bitcoin actually topped, it's possible. I'm not counting on that. But even if it did, we still get alt season. I just want Bitcoin to go higher so that alt season is more ridiculous, you know? Just saying. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything